It's my pleasure to bring up to stage now the amazing Rick Pastore. I'm going from Sustainable IT. Rick, thank you so much for joining us. I'll leave you to it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Anne Marie. Thanks for joining me for this session. This has a little bit of a different focus from what we heard, but the aim is to achieve all the great improvements and value from AI that we've been talking about for a couple of days here by enlisting the IT organization. And I'm Rick Pastore. I'm the research principal for sustainableIT.org, which is a nonprofit that was founded 3 years ago by CIOs and chief digital officers who wanted to form a group that could help each other drive sustainability through technology at their enterprises. And right from the beginning, AI was one of the areas of special attention. And the way they've defined responsible AI as a group of IT leaders at enterprises across the world, across all industries, is it's the development and implementation of systems in a way that realizes their value while ensuring fairness, transparency, accountability, and ethical alignment, which we've been talking about here. It also involves adhering to regulations, minimizing bias, protecting privacy, and ensuring that AI technologies are used to benefit all stakeholders, and mitigating the potential harms, which we also discussed: discrimination, security risks, degradation of the environment, and willful or accidental misuse. So responsible AI practices prioritize human oversight and the integrity of the data that's being used and ethical decision making throughout the whole AI lifecycle. So that's the definition of these leaders of enterprise technology, and are coming from a perspective where AI governance is kind of defaulting to CIOs anyway in many companies. This is research from Infotech in Canada, and it shows that at a third of companies that were polled, CIOs are the de facto governance organization or governance executive for AI implementation. The second most common governance leader is nobody, which is frightening. And it means that AI is just proliferating without any general oversight when this survey was done, which is about 1.5 years ago. So there's obviously a void there, and CIOs are either being sucked into the void or they're proactively taking the reins for governance. And that's why we developed this responsible AI governance program to help them educate others and apply a set of principles to the scaling of AI in the business. You may be familiar, if you're an IT person, you certainly are, that a lot of innovative technologies come into organizations through the back door. They are grassroots efforts in some cases. They are not strategically developed and applied in a systematic and methodical way that takes care of all the risks and so forth. They just show up. And this has happened over and over. And it's happening with AI, obviously. Now, usually the CIOs are called in at a later stage to say, we have a big mess of technology here. It's not standardized. It's not being used efficiently or effectively. And we need you to clean up the mess and scale it. And that's what CIOs are very good at doing. However, they said, we don't want to have to do that with AI. The consequences are too great if it becomes a mess that needs to be cleaned up. There's just too many downsides to irresponsible governance. So we want to get ahead of it. So our goal was to form a responsible AI working group, working with outside organizations, with our member practitioners, and develop a set of guidelines that come from the IT perspective, but are meaningful and useful to everyone that would be part of the collaborative governance and scaling of AI. Now, this is our diagram that shows what a sustainable IT organization aspires to across the ESG pillars and their areas of overlap. And you see right here that responsible AI has been part of the picture, just like having circular technology life cycles, just like inclusiveness of systems design, data usage, privacy, and security management, which IT has been doing for decades, and transitioning to renewable energy and so on. It's that important that it's built into this model from the very beginning. We also have metrics for IT leaders to apply in measuring their progress and reporting their capability in governing AI responsibly. So we have the approach to minimize negative economic, environmental, and social impacts from AI-enabled products. They document that approach, they update it, they report it. Incidences of failure to comply with AI policies, they have to track these. Approach to identify and reduce bias in AI analytics, and that goes all the way back to the source data. Major risks identified and remediation steps taken in database bias. And finally, the percentage of the algorithms and machine learning models that are being trained with anti-bias methodologies in the cases where organizations are doing their own model training. So the benefits of responsible AI governance are pretty obvious, but it's worth noting them because the governance principles that we're going to talk about in a minute are not simple. There's a lot of work that will go into them. So why are we doing this? Why are we taking the time to do this? Why aren't we just using AI as quickly as possible to gain a competitive advantage and hoping that there's no backlash or misfire? Well, these benefits will actually get you more value from AI ultimately. AI governance is not about throttling back the value of this technology. It's about liberating it. It's about making it real. It's about making it accessible. So if you look at these 5 benefits, if you're applying ethical usage principles aligned with company values, you're going to increase confidence in AI technology. And that increased confidence will make people more likely to pay attention to AI decision support and recommendations, because you're not going to listen to something that you don't necessarily have confidence in. Same thing with trust and loyalty from customers. If AI outcomes are fair, transparent, explainable, that builds corporate, customer, and institutional or investor trust in business decisions. So the worst thing that can happen to AI is it does all this computing, burns all this energy, creates all this expectation, and then the results kind of turn people off and they say, well, this can't be right. We're not going to pay attention to this. What happens to all that investment? What happens to all that potential? It kind of goes out the window, at least with that generation of leadership in the company. It also will be used to advance environmental goals and the competitive advantages, because it's not degrading the environment. It's actually being used to find ways to mitigate environmental challenges. It also future-proofs your workforce. If you prioritize AI literacy and a human-first AI, which is in our principles, I'll show you, companies are equipping their current and future workforce to engage effectively with AI technologies. They're not competing with them. They are actually being trained and skilled to make the most of their AI tool set or their AI partner or the AI application that augments their role, and they'll be able to grow with it. And then finally, by adhering to responsible AI governance, companies will ultimately be more freely able to tap AI's potential, because they won't be sidelined or put off by distrust, delays, compliance, regulatory fines, and other consequences of poorly governed technology rollouts, which IT leaders have seen multiple times. And as I said, they've had to clean it up. So let's look at the framework and principles that our CIO and Chief Digital Officer members created together and vetted with many companies around the country. First of all, it's a very simple framework. It only has three R words in it. The first is reflect, where we consider the intended uses and desired outcomes of AI applications by assessing the potential positive and negative impacts to stakeholders, as well as strategies, goals, and other commitments your business has made. It's a consideration stage of the framework. Here's the technology, here's what we think we can do with it, how will it affect what we have in place? Once you've reflected and considered and evaluated and assessed, you're able to go into the next stage of the framework, which is the reframe. This is where change happens. You're going to, based on the reflections, you're going to re-architect different fundamentals of the business, such as governance rules, how you make decisions with technology in particular, business processes and roles and skill sets in your workforce will have to be reframed, re-engineered, revised, as well as operations and enterprise architecture in order to maximize AI benefits and head off those potential negatives that you've given and come up with in your analysis. And then finally, the third stage is to reimagine. So you've reflected on what you can do now. You've revised or reframed the most important aspects that would make AI work effectively in your business. And now you're free to reimagine if this goes further, if we develop this further or scale it further or apply it to new markets. What kind of new business applications, processes, and experiences could be uniquely suited to AI's ability to augment human capabilities? So it's envisioning the possible. Now, when you do that, and maybe you come up with a couple of high priority visions for AI's future in the business, that creates the need to go back again and reflect on what those applications will do to your current processes. So it's a circular framework. Reflect, reframe, reimagine, then reflect again. Very simple, but a lot of companies are only focused on reimagining and reframing. They're just diving in, and that is creating problems potentially in some organizations and disappointment as well. So aligned to these three framework areas are a set of principles. Now, a principle is, people use the term a lot, but what it really is it's an aspirational goal. We want to ascribe to this. We want our situation to reflect these principles in reality. So it's something that people are striving for. So we have 9 of these, and they're very broad. They cover the whole spectrum of AI deployment and usage, not so much design up front, but downstream, how you deploy it and implement it, and what rules you have for its use. And they're very broad, and we did that deliberately because we wanted to get the full spectrum of this governance in place through these principles. Our next step is to go deeper in several of them, and we'll talk about how we're going to do that and maybe how you could help us. But let's look at the 9. So risk due diligence is number 1. It's the need to thoroughly analyze AI applications before they're deployed at scale, to look at their risk materiality and implications for business operations, policies, compliance requirements, as well as the business's goals and strategies. So risk is a huge Pandora's box. It's why it's number 1. Sustainability is also a form of risk, but it's ESG specific. So due diligence there is a thorough analysis before scale deployment for current and long-term implications for environmental, social, and enterprise governance commitments, policies, and regulations. If your company is in the UN Global Compact and has pledged a net zero carbon pledge for a certain year, is your AI going to derail that? Wouldn't it be good to know, because those pledges and the progress are public? Okay, so that's one of the reasons for sustainability due diligence at an enterprise level. Ethical usage is the application and deployment monitored for alignment to and compliance with the organization's ethical standards and business values. Things like equity and inclusion, non-discrimination, also safety, fundamentals like that. So that's the 3 principles aligned to reflect. Then we have 3 principles that are more about change, and they align to the reframe area of the framework. So the first one is optimizing data. Data has to be used in AI applications in a way that's appropriate, transparent, secure, privacy compliant. It's consensual. You're using data you have permission to use in AI, and it's as unbiased as possible. It'll never be perfect, but it is mitigated as much as it can be, and it's supported by appropriate data governance and security. So the data is, as has been said, it's the oil, it's the blood of AI systems, and it needs to be kept healthy and as purified as possible. Now, trustworthy outcomes will be results, recommendations, and decisions from AI applications that are fair, reasonable, explainable, accurate, hopefully, and they cause no harm to human health, safety, or fundamental rights. This is a principle that people take for granted because they think, oh, we're using it ethically, we're putting good data into it, so we're going to get trustworthy outcomes. Well, that's not necessarily so, and there's plenty of public embarrassing examples of that that companies have endured in their early experiments. So you've got to reframe what's going on in your business to ensure trustworthy outcomes and how your business makes decisions. And finally, AI literacy, that's a huge area. That's where MIA comes in with their programs to skill the future workforce and current workforce to use AI effectively. If we just drop it on people's desks, or if it's a bring your own AI to work scenario, it's not going to be optimal. And you want people to embrace it, not compete with it. So AI literacy is going to require new training, new programs, potentially adjusting people's roles and elevating them in different ways. It can't be underestimated how important it is. And the last 3 are more aligned with how we reimagine the business and the business process with a future of AI at its disposal. And the first one we have here as a principle is to be human first in your future AI deployment, prioritizing the enhancement and augmentation of existing roles, as opposed to just replacing roles or creating new roles that have no human element or oversight, which is dangerous. And that involves upskilling and a prioritization on redeploying displaced workers. Finally, inclusive benefits. We've talked about that in this conference. The benefits are applied equitably. And lastly, innovation. So AI is an innovation engine. It's driving innovative decisions that can create new innovations. It can create new AI applications. So the principle here is that all of those innovation the goals and outcomes that are AI dependent are also subject to the same governing criteria for risk, sustainability, ethics that are applied to AI usage in general. So in a sense, it's meta principle for AI and AI's children. So those are the 9 principles. We have about 50 actions applied to each of these principles in the 3 areas of the frameworks. These are actions that IT organizations can either take personally, directly, or influence their business peers to take. And you'll see that just by looking at these columns, there's a lot of actions associated with principles 1 and 2, risk and sustainability due diligence. As I said, those principles are big to unpack. There's a lot of detail in those, and you can review these actions later. They are high level and they can be broken down into steps, but these are the fundamentals that we said need to be in the checklist. So you'll see a set for reframe as well. You'll see a lot of actions around optimizing data as a principle. You're using optimized data, trustworthy outcomes. And then finally, in the reimagine, we have a smaller selective set of actions aligning with AI literacy and inclusive benefits and principled innovation. But it doesn't mean they're less important than some of the others. It just means they're less individual actions that IT in particular could influence or take on its own. So we have these principles, we have actions that are recommended, all from the perspective of IT and CIOs. So what are we going to do next? These aren't enough. This is just a set of goals, right, in a simple framework. What we're going to do next is to create a responsible AI working group that will include not only these IT leaders, but it will include expert organizations such as MIA, such as Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI. The World Bank is supporting us in this, and many other companies that are already doing work in responsible AI. So what we're going to do is bring them together and say, okay, what do we have? What are we missing? What do we need to create? And we're going to build on it and synergize it to a point where we have a set of guidance around responsible AI from the perspective of the technologists who will help you implement it and will have to govern it. So it won't be just technologists providing this to other technologists. It's technologists saying, here's how we need to govern this. Here's how we need to make the most value from AI. And they're going to be providing it to beneficiaries overall, global businesses and institutions. The unique value, though, is it's coming from the perspective of the people who know the technology in your business, and that's a bit of a difference than coming from third-party regulators or institutions like the UN, who is also working with us, by the way. And so our next steps, our first meeting as a working group will be at Climate Week. Mia will be in attendance working with us and certainly helping us with the AI literacy area that we want to do a deeper dive into, I'm sure. And we expect to come out of that meeting September 24th with probably a few different streams to develop new resources. So we'll have volunteer groups that'll take those on individually, go out and find the best that's out there right now and talk to organizations that are developing new resources and how we can leverage that and bring it together in a unified global rollout or distribution from the perspective, again, of the IT officers of global businesses. That's what's next. I'm excited to be part of that. I'm so happy that Mia is working with us on that as well and bringing their expertise to bear on it. And I hope others who have joined this session can certainly contact me and let me know if there's something you'd like us to consider that you already have developed and might want to share, or if there's something you want us to work on, and we can do so together. All right. I'm going to take a quick look at the questions here. Okay. So government regulations. Well, government regulations they kind of fill a void. You know, if there wasn't a void, we wouldn't need government regulations. But government regulations are always going to trail behind what's actually happening in organizations because nobody's waiting for them, right? So what we have to kind of do is strive for these principles in our implementations, and at the same time make sure they're in sync with where regulations are going. Not necessarily already existing, like the German AI Act, for example, it already exists, but there's more to come from that. So we kind of have to keep one finger on the pulse of regulation because it is going to influence, but don't think of it as setting the direction. It's actually just providing the lowest common denominator. And the rules are going to be different in Asia for Asian companies. So we really have to pay attention if we want to compete with AI to what everyone has to ascribe to when it comes to regulations. And hopefully this group can provide some insights to regulators and help influence where these go.
Thank you so much. I think that's an important point because they need to listen to the people that are actually using it. I was at an event recently where it was the Canadian government talking about how they were making AI regulations and they had no idea. So they were just putting them into place and saying that how it's so hard to get them out of place though once they're in. So there's that side of it too, where it's like you want them to be up to date,
No,
but you also want
regulators,
them to do them properly in the first place. So
they're never going to say we were wrong, let's revise this. No. So
that doesn't
it
happen.
needs to be a collaborative effort. And just remember that none of this is about throttling back AI and trying to stifle innovation. It's about responsible innovation. It's about getting to the value as effectively and efficiently as possible. IT is the one organization that can allow you to work with separated data that is secure. It's real data, but it's not going to, if you screw up with it, it's not going to bring down the system or expose customer data. It's sandbox data, and they can help create these experiments and enable these experiments. So IT needs to be in the loop here because they will not only help scale this efficiently and effectively, but they will help spur the innovation in a secure and responsible way.
Perfect. Well, Rick, I know on behalf of Mia, we're so excited about working with you and being part of those conversations. So thank you so much for inviting us to join you. We put your LinkedIn in the chat. So if anyone wants to reach out to Rick about, getting involved or getting more information, is that the best way to get a hold of you?
Yes, it is. I'm going to be the operational manager of the working group, but there'll be plenty of leaders, practitioners, and experts who want to step up and say, let's put our heads together and figure this out. And there'll be announcements and deliverables from us all through the balance of this year into next year. We'll be at the World Economic Forum with hopefully some new exciting resources for the world to take and apply.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.